The city woke to a salt-stung wind and the scrape of gulls against a pale sky, and Lyanna stood in the small Southron grove they called a godswood and tried to hear leaves that did not speak her language. The pond there shivered under the touch of the breeze. Oak and elm crowded the water's lip with their heavy summer green, and deeper in the shadows a tangle of myrtle and holly climbed one another for a sliver of light. No white tree, no face in the bark. She closed her eyes and pressed her palm to an old oak anyway, a stubborn thing with a twisted trunk, and thought of the forest around Winterfell and the weight of snow on the branches, and the way silence could feel like a person at your shoulder, saying without words that it would not abandon you. The southern sun was already feverish. It took the chill from her breath but not from her bones. Far away, past Stone and Market and the paved ways of the Red Keep, the bells of the Great September tolled for matins, a peal that seemed to rattle the sky. She drew a breath that tasted of copper and fruit and the faintest smoke, and told herself she would not be a child this morning. She had worn her hair unbound so the sea wind could tangle it as it pleased. She had slept little. The courtyard below her window had filled with carts at dawn like a tide coming in. Casks of wine and baskets bursting with oranges and pale peaches from lands where the sun never seemed to tire, great slabs of salt beef, kegs of honey beer, lutes and pipes, ribbons in so many colors that they glittered like a spill of coins. Even standing here, she could almost hear the market hawkers and the kick and clatter of horses. Everything was noisy in this city. Even the birds screamed. When she opened her eyes, she found the reflection of a stranger in the pond. Her, but not her. The silk lacing her bodice too fine, the seamstress's clever stitching making a narrow line at her waist, the fabric's dark blue a little like winter twilight and a little like the depth of a river. She understood the use of a dress as a piece on a field, the picture it made to see a northern daughter as something more than iron and cold. She had asked for the color because it was the closest they could come to home that would also please the southerner's eyes. The wind lifted a strand of hair and laid it across her cheek as if to comfort her, and she laughed at herself low. She could still smell the horses from the stables below. That, at least, would always be the same: hot hide, sweet hay, the sharp, living stink of it. She had always loved the way a horse could carry you out of yourself and back at once. Footsteps on gravel came muted through the trees. Not heavy, soft, deliberate. She did not turn, not immediately, because it was too soon to look at him, and she was very busy telling herself she had chosen this road with her eyes open. She had laughed in Brandon's face and then apologized, and then laughed again because he had loved her for being sharp and stubborn, and had hated any sign of fear in her. She had been promised to one man and had bent her neck to a different harness because a song had caught her by the heart. She tried to be honest even with the part of her that wished for simple anger, the kind that burned clean. "Lyanna," Rhaegar said. The breeze carried her name to her before he came through the oaks. "Forgive the intrusion." She half-turned. He had dismissed his attendants to the edge of the grove and stepped into the green alone. So many had said silver when they spoke of him that she had expected some shivering, otherworldly light, but it was simpler than that. He had a face made serious by habit and eyes that watched carefully and hands that had been trained for swords but remembered strings. The black of his doublet made his hair look paler than it was. The brooch at his shoulder showed 3 heads, deep red enamel polished so you might look into it and believe you saw a reflection of yourself if you were foolish and that was what you wanted. There was a man behind him in white, a tower of a man, sword hilt over his shoulder like a promise laid across a saint's bones. That one stopped and did not follow. "I trespassed too," she said. "If there were a face here, I would have asked for leave." "You are welcome in every part of the Red Keep," he said. "The grove will not complain." His gaze flicked to the water, then to her dress, then back to her eyes as if he checked doors were shut before he spoke. "The High Septon sends word that he will be ready when we are." "We," she tasted the word. It had not yet found its place on her tongue. "These are the hours when courage is a blade left in the cold," he said, not quite smiling. "Blunt at the edge, but it will cut if you push it hard enough." She turned to face him fully and, because she had known him to be a man who cared for words, spoke deliberately. "I am not afraid. I didn't think you were. The corner of his mouth moved like the memory of a smile rather than the thing itself. But something changes when the bells call and witnesses gather. Songs borrow their weight from the ears that listen. "You think in songs," she said. "So I was told," he answered, and his gaze slipped past her shoulder to the old oak and back. "I have much to atone for in the way of songs." She might have said something about crowns of flowers and the look on Robert's face when the story reached the Eyrie. But the hour was already thin, and the things one said at the edge of a vow should not be weapons, not even small ones. The white night at the edge of the grove shifted and then stilled again. She drew a breath and looked down at her hands, which were steady. "If we do this here," she said, "before the 7 it will be done. You are a married man." "King Aegon the First married both his sisters," he said. "It is not an empty precedent. The faith remembers even when it wishes not to." "And Elia is kind," he said, "and at sea." Ost him something to say it plainly in the air, where the words could not be gathered back and made harmless. "And more than kind, we will speak after the altar, not before it." His voice gentled. "It will not be a long day if we can make it a short one." She would not let pity turn her head. She kept her eyes on him until he stopped trying to fill his silence with words. After a time he nodded once and turned as if to leave her to her last minutes of quiet. But she said, "Wait." And he stilled with that deliberate grace she had watched even when she had thought herself only watching the harp. "There is a thing my father made me promise," she said. The breath she took tugged tight at the seams beneath her ribs. "He wants northern rights kept, as much as can be. He wants a witness of our God standing where he ought to stand." Rhaegar's eyes warmed by a fraction, subtle as sunlight pushed through thin cloud. "I asked already, and they will admit us to the grove after you and I together. I may not understand the old ways, but I will not make you a stranger to your own vows." "And if the old ways ask for the knife?" she asked lightly. "If they ask for blood? Let them have mine," he said. The bells changed their song a little. It was how bells spoke when they stopped being an idea and became a summons. Lyanna felt something shift in the ground beneath her, as if the whole city had taken a step toward some cliff or other. She touched the old oak again with her fingers, brief and firm, and then she turned and walked beside him through the trees. They went down by side doors and out into a courtyard where the air was bright as water. The city spread before them like an unrolled tapestry, slashed east to west by the stripe of the street of silk, peppered by cupolas and roofs pitched so steeply a child might think they were mountains in miniature. The 7's great dome shone as if the morning had been poured over it. Guards and courtiers had already begun to gather in the open way that led from the keep to the September, a current of silks and steel, the white cloaks like swans on a dark river. A boy in a baker's cart stood with his mouth open, his hands white with flour as if he had thrust them into snow and forgotten to take them out. News moved differently when one walked through it. Lyanna had learned that long ago, riding close to the band of traveling singers who would ride into one village and then another and leave behind words that changed shape as soon as they had their backs turned. Here men and women whispered in the shade of pillars and under the eaves of stalls. Some turned away and pinched their mouths shut, and some stared hungrily. She was glad, suddenly, of the cool weight of the wolf brooch at her breast. Her father had brought it, polished until the metal caught light in its teeth. Rickard Stark stood ahead of them with Brandon on one side and Eddard on the other. The Lord of Winterfell warplane will dyed the blue of bruised ice, and the sword at his hip was iron gray and steady as a road. Brandon had not slept. Anyone who knew him could tell. He looked at his sister and then away, and then he looked back because he was not made to look away from anything for very long. He had been a storm on two legs even as a boy, laughing when the wind was against him. Ned's face told little. When her eyes found his, he tightened his mouth for a heartbeat, and then let it loosen and gave her the barest nod, a brother saying, "I stand behind you if the path you have chosen breaks apart. A small thing, a great thing." Rhaegar spoke low to the old steward with the sightless eye who had come to fetch them, and then to the white-cloaked men who formed around them like a wall that had learned to move its feet, and then he did not speak again. The good people of King's Landing collected along the way. A woman with a basket of squirming eels laughed, A coarse, delighted laugh that made the eels thrash as if they understood their lives were being made part of a tale. A one-armed hedger wore a wreath of rosemary as if it were a king's crown and threw petals of rue at their feet, murmuring words that might have been curses or blessings, depending on the ear. Inside the September, the air was steeped in incense so thick it made her want to cough. The floor was cool and bright marble. The glass in the windows was a treasury of color, all blues and reds and greens that painted the faces of the crowd like a mask. The High Septon was like a cliff that had learned to move, his skin pallid with a fine network of veins beneath it, his rings so gaudy they looked like burdens. When he raised his arms, the sleeves of his robe fell back and Lyanna saw the flesh of them. Soft, sad. He intoned a prayer whose words were as polished and weightless as shells. Knights and ladies and lords watched as if the September had become the stage in a play, and everyone wondered who would make the next speech that would be counted as history when it was written down. Elia was already there. Elia Martell did not wear a crown in her hair. She had 2 children beside her, Rhaenys, bright-eyed as a lynx, and the baby boy, soft as a loaf just out of the oven, his lashes thick as brush. A coral necklace took the sun on her throat and threw it back in flecks. She was thinner than Lyanna remembered and paler, but the set of her shoulders spoke of a grace that did not require health to exist. Her presence at the foot of the altar was a decision the city would talk about for years. She stood and watched the procession and did not look away when her husband came to her. Her eyes went to Lyanna once, brief and unflinching, and then returned to the rail. Rhaegar stopped before her and bowed his head just enough. Elia rested her hand on the daughter's crown of dark hair and then stepped aside. Lyanna did not know what part of her had expected some sign, some tremor in the air, the old gods complaining that another god's fire had been brought too close to their trees, or else the 7 striking the floor with some celestial staff and demanding that the rules be recited carefully. But the world remained only itself. Light fell through colored glass in stripes and broke again on polished stone. Beneath that light, they spoke of dispensation and precedent and the old Aegon of whom all their talk was made, and Lyanna, who had been schooled by her father in the plain arithmetic of oaths, spoke the lines she had learned to speak. She did not glance at Elia, but she felt her like a presence at her left shoulder. The High Septon's low drone was interrupted once by a soft cough that moved through the crowd like a ripple through grain stalks when the wind reaches that part of the field. Rhaegar's voice stayed steady. He had been trained to be unshakable before strangers, and he was a prince. Strangers were the air he breathed. Lyanna did not try to read his face. She had never loved men for being puzzles she could solve. She had loved a boy once for being a wind that found every loose hinge in a house and rattled it, and she was standing here because she had realized she needed to love someone for being a door that swung on good metal instead and would be there in the morning. The ring was simple. Smooth steel with a band of some pale metal chased into it so fine it looked like a hair caught in the blade of a knife. When he slid it onto her finger, it was cool and then warm. Hands closed briefly over hands. The air seemed to grow deeper by an inch, as if each breath this city drew included them both now, and the city would keep them whether they wished to go or not. When they left the altar, Elia lifted her chin once and stepped forward. Rhaegar paused. Lyanna stopped too because the edge of the moment had been sharp and this, perhaps, would smooth it. "You do not kneel well," Elia said to Lyanna, soft enough that those nearest would pretend the words had been for their own private understanding and not to be carried into any other ear. There was a flicker then that might have been humor and might have been something else. "I do not kneel when I can help it," Lyanna said, with a quiet she had practiced all morning. Elia's fingers brushed her son's temple. The baby blinked. "The city will tell this story as it pleases," she said. "Make certain the first line is your own." It was as neat a blessing as any priest would give. Lyanna bowed her head and then lifted it because the bells had changed their tone again. And this time the sound was more festival than prayer. They went to the grove after, as promised. The sun had risen above the buildings and made diamonds of the pond. The old oak waited, stubborn as ever and unaware of empires. The white knight had gone. Rhaegar had left the guards beyond the trees, and they stood alone in the cool green place. Lyanna put her palm to the bark again and watched the ripples run over water like a thought moving through the head of a very old creature. She whispered her name and the name she would be known by now, and the name her mother had said into her hair when she was a baby with no hair yet at all. She whispered the names of her brothers and her father and the names of the hounds that had been buried round the base of the heart tree in Winterfell, because the old gods loved dogs and children best. She did not cut her palm because the old ways are not a ledger, but when she had finished speaking her names, Rhaegar drew a small knife from his sleeve and opened his thumb and let a single drop fall and catch the sunlight just before it touched the water, and she understood that he had been listening when she had said that the gods she loved asked for blood and truth. He glanced at her as if to ask whether he had done it rightly. She took his uninjured hand, and it was enough answer. On the way back, sound and color seemed louder than they had been before, as if a curtain had been pulled back. The Red Keep had many faces. There were courtyards built for horses to turn in without difficulty, and such gardens as this southern sun could make riotous in a fortnight, and long galleries meant to impress with sheer distance. There were cells, too, with no windows, and rooms beneath rooms where the air never moved. Lyanna knew because she was a person who noticed where corridors ended and where they did not. Today the castle showed her only its bright places. Servants hurried and laughed. A boy hurried past carrying a tray of small pies with flaking crusts, and Brandon lifted one cleanly without breaking stride and had taken the first bite before the boy knew it was gone. He turned and scowled, and then saw the wolf pin at Brandon's shoulder and turned that scowl into something like a grin. "Eat," Brandon said to Lyanna, stuffing half the pie into her hand. "You will forget otherwise." She did not have the stomach for it, but he had always watched out for the part of her that would rather starve than admit to hunger. She bit into the pie, and it gave way in a rush of meat and browned onion and hot fat. It made the world steadier. She wiped a smear of juice from her thumb and caught the look he gave her, quick with the kind of love that wore carelessness as a cloak. She wanted to tell him to be kind to himself. He had been promised to a Temper, and Temper did not like to be refused. Instead, she made a face at him, childish as when they were small, and then she caught Eddard's glance and saw with a start that her gravest brother was smiling very slightly. The smile disappeared so fast she could have believed she had imagined it, but she knew she had not. It sat with her like bread sits. Small, sturdy, good. Their father said little. He had been in court with the king before sunrise, and the day had started early for him. The lines around his eyes had been carved a long time ago by northern wind and worry. The southern sun only lit them. He put his hand on her shoulder and left it there for a count of 5 in. Dee then withdrew it and turned toward the hall whose doors had been thrown open. When they went in, cool air breathed from the stone, and in that air 1,000 candles lifted themselves on their own smoke. The feast began with a formalness that was like armor on a horse, heavy and necessary. Targaryen red and black twined with stark gray. The carpets were thick enough to smother the sound of a child loosening a chair from its place and dragging it across the floor. Lyanna's chair had been carved with wolves running around the back in a tangle of motion. She felt them at her shoulder when she sat. A great gilded candelabrum hung overhead. Musicians played in a corner, and though they were good, they were not him. He did not touch a harp all afternoon. Men came to speak to her. Some were kind. Some were watching her mouth to see how she shaped words, because they liked to know how a person's mind worked so they might guess which way she would turn at a crossroads. Some had already decided that everything that would be said had been said when the High Septon spoke dispensation, and nothing she might say would change their private sentences. She kept her answers clear and not long, the way her father had taught her when he let her sit at his side in the small hall at Winterfell, while the far men came to ask for wood and justice and the patching of walls. He came last, as was his place, and when he stood beside her chair, the hall made a sound like a room being cleared of smoke. An exhalation that made the air briefly visible. Rhaegar put his hand lightly on the carved wood and did not close his fingers. His face was composed. He spoke the words of courtesy, and she answered them. The conversation was like a figure they both knew the steps of. Beneath it, another thing moved. "There will be appointments to make," he said when the niceties had been done. "You brought riders with you, names that matter in your halls. "You will please ask my father," she said. "If you ask me, I will tell you that all of them should be given what they ask, and that will cause trouble." "Truth seems to be the first of your vows," he said. "I tried to take it," she said. "Whether it took me, I cannot say." He inclined his head. "I will ask your father." He did speak to Rickard Stark then, long and low, and to Eddard, shorter still, and to Brandon, whose voice rose once and then lowered, because you ought not to quarrel with a prince on your sister's wedding day, even if your heart urged you to. He spoke to Elia too later, in a room removed from the heat of the hall's breath. Lyanna did not follow. She sat while 3 silver plates bearing sweetmeats passed before her and took none. Rhaenys came and stood in front of her and stared solemnly for such a long time that Lyanna had to laugh. "You are the Wolf Lady," the girl announced. She had the air of one who believed that the world should know what it was. "I am," Lyanna said. "And who are you?" "I am the princess," Rhaenys said, as if that answered all questions of identity and purpose. "So you are," Lyanna said. "Do you ride?" Rhaenys demanded. "Yes, fast. Faster than any man who has ever had to chase me," Lyanna said, and the child nodded gravely, as if she had been given membership in a club whose criteria were not easily met. "I have a kitten," Rhaenys said. "Her name is Lady Whiskers. She does not like the cook." "The cook must have some sins to atone for," Lyanna said. "What did he do?" "He told me not to sit on the table," Rhaenys said. "It is a silly rule. Many are." Lyanna agreed, and the child smiled, a quick dawn across her face, and went in search of another sweet she had been told she might not have. In the solar where Rhaegar and Elia met, the light fell more softly, filtered through thin curtains that billowed just a little. The door closed behind them. They stood apart at first, 2 figures making careful shapes with their breath, the air between them bright with all the things they could not say in the hall. Elia's hands were slender in her lap. She had taken off the coral, and her throat looked fragile without it. "You looked as if you were trying not to watch me with her," Elia said after a time. Her voice was quiet and would not carry. "But you watched." "I have never known how not to watch you," he said, and the truth of the sentence rang in both their ears. He had loved her when they were both younger and the world had seemed a different shape. He loved her now. Love did not cease because its object was not sufficient to a prophecy he had wrapped himself in like armor. "It will be easy for the city to make me a saint," Elia said. "If they do, remind them that saints are killed. I will be a woman instead. It gives me a better chance at living." "You are not made for martyrdom," he said, and it was praise. "I am made for Dorne," she said. "It will be hard for my brother to swallow this. It is already hard. I will require things from you to make it less hard. Name them. Honors and places," she said. "The small, useful ones, not only those painted bright. A pledge written that no child of mine will be put aside. A vow in your own words that the woman you marry today will not sleep while I sleep, that you keep separate houses and separate feasts for the nights that matter most. A gift to Sunspear, the sort the city must notice and speak of as generosity, not payment. And a promise that you will not summon me to watch when the court grows ugly. I am tired, Rhaegar. I have been tired a long time." He stepped nearer. "I can give you all but the last. If the court grows ugly, I may have to ask you to sit beside me so that it grows less so. You govern when I cannot and see what I do not. If I would rule, I would not make my world smaller than it is." "You make it a different shape," she said. Bitterness and a thread of admiration twined together. "Very well. Then you will not summon me for spectacles. Not for tea. He sort of thing that makes men feel they are stronger when they are not." He bowed his head. "Not for that." She let her breath out through her nose. "We will make the city believe you are a man given to astonishing fairness," she said. "It will surprise them and make them pliable. It will be the best dull cover for whatever bright thing you believe awaits us all." He said nothing to that because prophecy wore poorly when spoken plainly even among friends, and they were more and less than friends. He took one of her hands carefully and pressed his mouth to the knuckles as if he were a courtier trying to remember what courtesy was for. She pulled her hand away and stood. "The children will dine early," she said. "Send word to my brother. He will bear it worse if he hears it from a stranger. That you will install Lyanna's men in places that matter. That the north will sit beside us and not beneath us. If Dorne thinks itself made small, it grows teeth. You know it." "I know," he said. "Doran is more careful than his shadow. Oberyn is a dagger looking for a reason." "He loves reasons," Elia said, almost fond. "Give him one to love that isn't your throat." In the Eyrie, long miles and a world away, the letter came in a courier's pouch that smelled of dust and iron and the mountain's clean air. The falcon banners stirred slow in a wind that knew no salt. Jon Arryn broke the seal and read without changing expression, and then handed the parchment to the dark-haired boy at his right. Ned's eyes moved and did not widen. He finished and laid it on the table as if it might scald. He was a creature made of self-command and the quiet recognition of what would break a thing if too much weight was set upon it. At the end of the table, Robert had already taken hold of it with impatient fingers. He read, and his mouth opened, and then he was on his feet with his chair sliding backward, and only the thick carpet saved it from clattering. He was almost magnificently predictable. He slammed his palm down. Jon Arryn's hand settled on the table with a quiet weight that steadied everything around it. "They cannot," Robert said. He was very young still, his strength a thing he had not learned to spend wisely. "He cannot. He swallowed, his throat moving as a man's will refuse to admit a truth it had seen. "He will not keep her. He will break her and toss her bones to that city and call it honor. We are owed." "You are owed nothing," Ned said, and if he had allowed himself to remember his sister's laugh, he might not have been brave enough to say it. "We are promised only the winter and our work. Do not speak as if she were a barrel owed you in a trade. You little gray fish," Robert spat, and then he set his hands on the table as if he might pick it up and throw it through the airy open windows and over the mountain's edge. He breathed once, twice, with the sound men make just before they choose the sort of violence they will offer to the world. "He took her," he said. "He took what was promised to me. That is theft." "She walked," Ned said quietly, because he could hear Lyanna's stride in the halls of Winterfell and knew she had not been built for being carried. "She is a girl," Robert said. "She is a person," Ned answered. "It is not the same." Jon Arryn had not yet moved. He was that sort of man, a mountain, which is a way of saying he had been a boy once who learned to stand and be a shelter. "There will be a tempest if we stand in front of this," he said. "We will not move it. We can choose to be bent by it or shaped by it." "I choose to break it," Robert said, and that was the truest thing about him, and would be even when he was a man whom other men feared to contradict. "I will go down there, and I will tear the doors off the September and take her by the hand and bring her north, and I will." "And you will hang," Jon Arryn said, "before you have finished your very next breath." He raised one hand now, palm up, patient. "If we were to fight, and if you were to win, what would you win? A bride as frightened as a horse in a burning barn? A realm that thinks you a brigand? Or worse, a court that thinks you weak because you could not bear a wound to your pride?" Robert swallowed hard. The courtyard below sent up a bright peal of laughter. A squire had fallen into a trough and clambered out dripping and full of curses that would earn him stripes if he were heard. The sound seemed to sting Robert more than any word. He looked down at the letter again as if rereading it might produce a different line. "Write to your sister," he said to Ned at last. The words were heavy and each took exit reluctantly from his mouth. "Write and tell her I will not." He bit the word to death before he let it live fully. "Tell her I understand. Tell her I will not come to steal her as if she were a cup. But tell her," his voice roughened. He threw an arm out in a half-helpless gesture. "Tell her she must not let him make her small. Tell her she must trample their rugs with muddy boots. If she comes to harm, Ned, if she comes to harm," Ned said, "I will go with you and we will break whatever must be broken." He meant it. He said it simply because loyalty was not a current that ran shallow in him. Jon Arryn released a little of the breath he had kept. "We will be watchful," he said. "The king is not well, and a sick man's temper is everyone's problem. This may be a rope we can use or a knot that strangles us. We will not mistake it for a crown. By nightfall in King's Landing the heat had curdled. The sky went purple, then blue as bruises, then a deep copper the color of old coins. Torches threw their impatient light against stone. The city's lower parts were a stew of voices. In the red keep they spilled wine and dreams with nearly equal carelessness. Servants moved like fish through reeds, slipping just out of the way of a lord's elbow. A singer took up a tune and let it catch and swell and break. Rhaegar did not play. He sat at the high table only as long as a prince was required to sit. When propriety loosened its grip, he stood to seek air and moved through the press with the small smile of a man who understands that too much attention starves a man as quickly as too little. He had been a boy when his mother told him of kings who had believed themselves reliefs carved in marble rather than blood and flesh. They had cracked when the heat or cold took them. He had thought he would be different. He had learned to be quiet enough that words counted when he used them. He had learned to make his blade an instrument. He had learned to listen to dreams that sang like knives. All of it was a ladder. He did not know yet whether it would put him above what was coming or set his foot where he might be seen and shot. He thought he was ready to be king. He was certain he was ready to be different from his father. The king, the man he would be different from, watched his city through shafts and slots and grills, in rooms beneath the rooms where the air never moved. His mouth tasted of ashes. Servants were a plague with hands. The crown was heavy and a liar. His fingers twitched sometimes as if they were remembering something they had not done yet and were hungry to do. He watched the hall's spill of light from a dark place and learned nothing and everything. He had long ago mastered the art of being fed news as if it were meat on a skewer, so that he need not touch it with his hands. He had learned to trust that there were men whose business was to place things in his sight and make certain they saw what they wished him to. It made his head ring. He did not sleep. He thought of Tywin like a word he could never quite spit out of his mouth. He thought of wildfire the way a child thinks of a new toy in a locked cupboard. He heard bells even when there were none. Varys came like a breath of perfume in a small room. He did not pretend to be anything other than quiet. "They made the vows," he said in his peculiar way of speaking that made language seem smooth. "I heard," Aerys said. His nails clicked against the arm of his chair. "You think me deaf. I hear rats in the walls. I hear my wife's ghost telling me I was never beautiful. Your grace is..." Varys paused. "Well, I am not well," Aerys said with such precise clarity that for a moment it was as if a knife had spoken. "I am the king." He turned his face toward the eunuch as if it might melt him. "What will they do? The snakes? The wolves? The birds? What does a nest do when a new branch is tied to it?" "It depends upon the nest," Varys said, "and upon the branch." He used his hands like a painter gesturing about the size of a thing he might paint if he could hold a brush. "There will be discomfort. There will be men who write letters with a great deal of ink. There will be some who vow fealty and mean it. There will be some who vow fealty and mean only to be seen vowing. The Stormlands think themselves affronted. Dorne thinks itself diminished. The North thinks itself expanded. The Reach thinks of metaphors for gardens. The boy at Storm's End is a boar," Aerys said. "He will charge the fence and break his neck. Perhaps," Varys murmured, "but the old falcon with whom he lives is a rock. Rocks blunt necks." "Tywin," Aerys said, as if coughing up a bone. "He is at Casterly Rock," Varys said calmly. "He will not stir yet. He will test the weight of the snow in the passes before he sets men to digging." "I could send for the wolf," Aerys said abruptly. "The father. Bring him here. Remind him whose table he eats from." Varys's eyes did not move. "If you bring him, he will come. He will bow and he will not forget the measure of the space between his head and the floor when he does. He will remember it with insulting exactness. It might be better to let him remember the North and how far it is." Aerys's laugh was a thin thing, too sharp in places. "I will burn them all," he said almost conversationally. as a man might remark upon a weather front he has heard about and does not yet believe in. If they light fires under me, I will learn the way to light a fire beneath the world. I will not be mocked, not by a son who believes himself a poet, not by a girl with a wolf's face, not by a lord with a memory. Varys inclined his head as if honoring a point of rhetoric. If your grace wishes the city to love you, you must give them bread, he said. If you wish for their adoration, you must give them a story. If you wish for their fear, they have it, Aerys hissed. Varys smiled without showing teeth. Then you must also give them an excuse, he said. Fear without excuse grows bored and becomes something else. In the hall, Lyanna stood from the high table because she could not bear another course, and she did not wish the heaviness in her throat to become something she could not swallow quietly. She stepped sideways down a corridor not because she hid but because stone absorbs things better than tapestries. A serving girl with bare feet hurried by, carrying a pitcher brimming with wine that sloshed and left a bright trail like a wound on the flagstones. Lyanna bent and scooped a slip of orange peel out of her sandal. A small annoyance that grounded her so completely she almost laughed aloud in relief. She had told Rhaegar in the grove that if the old ways asked for blood, they could have his. It had been a joke and not a joke. She had given her truth. She would keep giving it. She thought of her mother's hands and of winters when the Godswood's pool froze completely over and the men had cut a hole with an axe so the dead might be given water on their way, because the old ways were as much about the dead as the living. She thought of Robert's hands, big as shovels, and the way he could make a whole table feel as if it might tip toward him when he laughed. She thought of Elia's eyes on the steps of the September. She thought of the prince's thumb opening, like a small red mouth, and how the drop had flashed as if it were a jewel falling. There was a window that looked out over the city. It had a sill broad enough to sit on, and when she climbed onto it and pressed her back to the stone, she could see the black ribbon of the river and the lights of ships shifting as the current worked them slowly along. She pushed a hand through her hair. She wanted to ride. She wanted to find the long straight of the King's Road and lean low over a horse's neck and feel the earth come up to meet the iron of the shoes and the air change in her throat. You will be seen if you try to run, a voice said, mild and not unkind. Eddard had always walked like a careful man. She had not heard him. She did not turn. If I wanted to run, I would have done it already, she said. There are stable doors enough. He came to stand with his shoulder touching the wall at her left. He stood so close that she could feel the cool of him through the heat of the evening and the dress. It was a brother's comfort and the best kind. I did not mean running, he said. I meant riding. She smiled now, quick and dry. If you came to scold, you should have brought a list and a stick. Brandon prefers the stick. Brandon is not built for gently correcting a crooked path, he said. The hint of humor there because he had learned humor was a tool for easing men out of corners where they had become stuck in their certainty. I am not come to scold. I hope I am not come to forgive. That would be an insult. I am come to stand. That is a thing I need. I know, he said. They looked out together. The city looked back with 1,000 eyes. Somewhere a man was arguing with a woman about a debt they both knew could not be paid. Somewhere a child chased a goose. Somewhere a drunk sang with the belief that he had been given a new voice tonight and that the world was better for it. Lyanna turned and set her brow against the stone, and then turned it back because she did not want to carry that gesture into the rest of her life. Do you think he will keep his promises? Ned asked, neutral. He has kept everyone he has made to me, she said. That is not the same as saying he has kept them all. And the king. She thought of the man she had not seen today, the one whose shadow fell so far across his son that any man who looked too closely might find his own shadow climbing up his calves. He is a danger, she said, feeling the weight of the word and not using any of the other ones. Mad, broken. That at once made a thing too simple and too difficult. Ned's mouth moved. Yes, he said. He is. Write to Robert, she said after a time. Tell him that he would not have liked me if he had had me. That is not true, Ned said. It is, she said. He loves the idea of me he has carried for a long time. He would have wanted me to be quiet when I could not be, and loud when I should not. I would have made him miserable. He would have made me so angry that I forgot who I was." She swallowed. A moth came to batter itself against the glass near her head. She reached up and cupped it gently and released it back to the dark. "Tell him I wish for his happiness and for his ease. Tell him I will not be easily broken." Ned nodded once. "I will tell him," he said. "I do not know which part he will hear." They stood a while longer because it was easier than moving. Then she climbed down from the sill and straightened the skirts she would never grow used to. She set her shoulders. She went back into the hall with her brother at her shoulder. Arthur Dane, who had stood in the godswood in white and not moved when every part of him had wanted to be a different sort of witness, came to the hall's edge now and watched the prince and the wolf girl stand beneath a chandelier whose candles had been sobbing wax for hours. He had given his life to a particular idea of honor. He had learned that songs were made by men who had never stood very long in a steady rain and did not know how a blade rusted. He had also learned that sometimes the smallest thing made the largest difference, like the way a man's hand might lift or not lift when a king ceased to be himself and became only a crown someone else had set upon a stake. He admired Rhaegar and loved him and did not quite trust the thing that gleamed at the center of the man. A star was very beautiful and also could scorch your hand if you took it into your palm. Jaime, still a boy in gold and white who had not yet learned which of the two was heavier, stood on the hall's other side and watched the prince too. He had the bright, impatient look of a hound who has scented blood far down the trail and cannot yet be loosed. He admired beauty. He loved the clean line of a sword stroke and the way a certain sort of courage sat comfortably inside a man's shoulders. He did not know the measure of the patience the court would demand of him. Not yet. He watched and he learned, and he did not think that he learned anything. In the corner, a singer pulled at his strings a little timidly and began a tune that had not been allowed lately. One of the old ones, with a melody like water running over flat stones. Men's heads turned. A woman's gaze went distant with memory. Rhaegar's eyes flickered once toward the singer and then away. He did not move to take the harp from the man's hands. He put his palm flat on the table near Lyanna's hand and left it there for a count of 3, as if to say, "I am here and I am not." The feast went on because feasts do. Men stood and sat and stood again. Wine ran, sticky and sweet and dark. A white dog slept under a bench with his nose tucked tight and his paws twitching as if he dreamed of deer. A stable boy with straw caught in his hair leaned too far into the room just for the joy of seeing people dressed like stories, and a lady noticed him and got up and came to him and tucked a small cake into his hand with a wink and sent him on high. Esway. He ate it in 3 bites around the corner and almost choked on the second. Servants carried away platters and brought others. Outside, a handful of boys set to fighting with willow switches, and the littlest one laughed so hard when he was hit that he dropped his switch entirely and begged to be struck again because the sting was delicious. In a quieter wing, Elia sat with her daughter and let Rhaenys comb her hair. Each stroke pulled a little. Rhaenys hummed a tune that made no sense and all sense, because it belonged to a child who had not yet been told that songs should memorize the grief of men to be worth anything. "Will she live with us?" Rhaenys asked suddenly, tugging a thought free with a snarl. "She will live near," Elia said, "and sometimes here, and sometimes in the north when the air grows too thick for a wolf to breathe." "Will she play?" Rhaenys asked. "With me. She is made for running," Elia said. "You will have to learn to run faster if you want to keep up." Rhaenys considered this, then nodded gravely. "I will run faster," she said, "and I will let her play with Lady Whiskers." "That is very generous," Elia said. She closed her eyes because it let the room stop looking at her. She thought of Doran's quiet face and his letters, written with a care that might be mistaken for cowardice by a man who had never learned that courage often looked like a pause rather than a leap. She thought of Oberyn's laugh and the way he loved his daughters as if they were daggers and one did not lay one's daggers down in the rain. She thought, too, of a child who had not been born and might now never be, and she gathered herself around that thought the way one gathers a shawl when a window has been left ajar. In the East Tower, an old maester stopped over a table and took a small pin out of a slip of cloth and set it carefully into a roll of parchment to mark a place he knew he would wish to return to. He had watched princes and wars and knew each used up men in ways the other did not. He took up a player's piece, red-painted wood, with 3 heads carved into it, and set it on a small board. He moved a gray wolf toward it, 1 cautious square. On the dark lower streets, someone told the story already reshaped. That the northern girl had stormed the September in furs and slapped the High Septon and called him a fat toad. That the prince had wept to see her. That the Dornish princess had stabbed her with a hairpin and the wolf had laughed and pulled the pin out and stuck it into an orange and gone on eating it. The city loved stories that made great ones into clowns. It loved stories that made them into gods more. It would take time to decide which this would be. Above, in the chamber that had not been his and would not be for reasons neither of them could bear to name, Rhaegar stood at the window and let the night wind find him. The river was a black ribbon. He thought of a prophecy that had not been written but sung, and then not sung and then written in him. He thought of the shape of the realm as it had been given to him and the shape he wanted to force it to take, the way a cooper bends slats and bands them around something that desires to be round and sometimes desires to be straight and breaks in the making. He thought of other fires than the ones his father loved. Lyanna came to the door and stopped. For a breath they were people only, not crown and wolf, not promise and problem. There would be days when the city wore them like masks and asked them to stay still so the crowd might applaud and jeer and applaud again. There would be days, too, when they were only themselves, and a wind off the river brought a scent of tar and fish and the faint tin taste of lightning that lived in a summer's air even without rain. "Do you know what we have done?" she asked, not unafraid. "Yes," he said. The word held within it more than one meaning and none he could easily explain. "We have made a story no one has yet learned to tell properly. We have made work," she said. He allowed himself the smallest smile. That too. They stood in the window, and below them the city slept and did not and dreamed as it always dreamed of bread and breaking and the day when the men with banners would forget to ride. Somewhere a man in a shop full of wooden saints sanded a thumb to smoothness and asked the figure to forgive him for what his hand had done wrong. Somewhere a woman rolled a coin across her knuckles and practiced a trick she would use tomorrow to make a sailor laugh and forget to bargain well. Somewhere in the dark beneath the red keep a torch guttered and then steadied and showed a corridor no one had walked in 3 rains. The north wind paused at the edge of the world as if to listen. Morning would come with its unquestioning light and the counting of lists. Dispensations would be written and counterwritten. Doran would send a letter with words like woven reeds. Oberyn would ride out of Sunspear in a ribbon of dust. Robert would break a training spear and ask for a heavier one. Jon Arryn would write back carefully. The king would move a piece on a board with hands that could not keep from shaking. The harpers would learn a new tune and play it badly until they could not remember how to play anything else. And the wolf girl, whose blood belonged to snows and horses, whose throat had a song still climbing toward its note, would take an hour before any of it and walk to the small grove again, and lay her palm against a tree that did not know her and in the silence hear something that was not words tell her that she had not yet understood the size of the road she had chosen. For now there was only the blue bruise of night and the light poured out over the river and the way 2 people could stand at a window and know the shape of their own hands as if they had been drawn for them on a map and the distance between those hands measured in grains of salt. They did not speak. Again. They drew breath. They waited for the hour to turn and carry them like a boat that had slipped its mooring and was at last in the current. Drawn by a tide it did not command and had asked for all the same.